She left her 6-month-old twins in their father's arms and walked away without looking back. Michael begged her, his voice breaking. "Aora, they're your daughters." But Aora zipped her suitcase shut. Her eyes were cold. "I didn't sign up for this suffering. Look around, no money, no future. I won't waste my life in poverty." The babies whimpered, tiny hands reaching for a mother who had already made her choice. Michael staggered after her. "Please, they need their mother. I'll work harder. Don't leave us like this." But she pushed past him. "You'll always be struggling. And I refuse to drown with you." And just like that, Aora vanished into the streets, leaving whispers behind, leaving a father broken, and leaving 2 little girls, abandoned, before they could even speak her name. For a moment the world went still. Then the twins cried louder, their small voices piercing the air. Michael stood in the open street, trembling, clutching them both, as tears blurred his sight. A grown man, broken in front of strangers. The whispers grew. His wife left him. How will he raise them alone? He lowered his head, kissing his daughters' foreheads. "It's just us now, my girls. Just us." And so, on that morning, in the middle of a noisy city that didn't care, a father's lonely journey began. The next morning, he tied one daughter to his back with a faded cloth, and carried the other in his arms. He stepped into the busy streets searching for work. Construction sites, garages, bus parks. Each time people looked at the babies, and laughed. "You can't even take care of yourself," one man said. "Go and drop those children first." But he refused to give up. Hunger clawed his stomach. Blisters burned his feet. Yet he kept knocking on doors. Finally, a small furniture workshop gave him a chance. The pay was little, but it was something. He sanded wood until his hands blistered, carried planks heavier than his own body, inhaled dust until his chest burned. Still, he smiled when his daughters stretched out their little hands. Days later, Michael found a cheap daycare. Every morning before sunrise he carried them there. Every evening, no matter how tired, he came back for them. The sight of their smiles gave him strength. When the twins turned 3, the real test came. School. He sat by their bed one night, whispering, "You will go to school. Even if I go hungry, you will learn. That is my promise." He took extra jobs, carried heavy loads at the market, polished shoes for strangers at night. Every coin he earned went into a little box under his bed. Neighbors mocked him. "See those children? Poor man is wasting his time. How long before he pulls them out?" But Michael didn't listen. Each time he saw his daughters reading, writing, singing rhymes, his chest swelled with pride. Sometimes, there was only enough food for 2 plates. He would place them before the girls. "Eat, my angels. Daddy is not hungry." And while they ate happily, he swallowed his hunger in silence. His friends warned him, "One man cannot carry this burden. You'll die before they grow." But he always replied, steady, unshaken, "If dying means they will live, then so be it." Grace and Gloria grew, side by side in a crowded public school. Worn benches, faded walls, secondhand books. Yet they never complained. They paid attention. They dreamed beyond the struggles at home. Grace loved to read. Gloria had a gift with numbers. Teachers noticed. "Those twins," they whispered, "they'll go far, if given the chance." By the time they finished secondary school, they were young women now. Their uniforms were still neat, though their sandals were worn thin. On their last day, Grace whispered, "Can you believe it? We're done with secondary school." Gloria smiled, her voice calm. "Done with this part, yes. But the real battle is ahead." And so, with exams ahead and a future uncertain, Michael's journey of sacrifice was far from over. But in the quiet glow of a kerosene lantern, watching his daughters write, dream, and hope, he knew one truth. His pain was not wasted. His love had built a foundation. Sometimes when the power went out, the heat pressed down heavily on the students. But Grace and Gloria hardly noticed. They were too focused. In the evenings they would return home to their father, who often found them bent over their books again, reviewing what they had written that day. "And then you girls will not even rest?" Baba would laugh, wiping sweat from his brow after work. "You read before exam, you read after exam. You want to read the paper twice." Grace grinned. "We just want to make sure we got it right." After WC came jam, and the tension in the house grew even higher. The twins borrowed past questions from neighbors, scribbled notes late into the night, and whispered formulas to each other by candlelight whenever the power failed. Gloria, the bolder one, liked to quiz Grace aloud. The nights were long, but their hope burned brighter than the lantern. When the results finally came out, Baba was the one who went to check. He returned home that evening with a folded slip in his shirt pocket. Grace. Gloria. His voice carried both excitement and trembling. The twins sat before him, their hands clasped tightly together. Baba unfolded the paper slowly, his eyes glistening. You both passed well, he said, his voice breaking into a smile. Very well. I am proud of you. Then he picked up Gloria's slip. At first his voice stumbled. 350? He whispered, almost in disbelief. Ah, Gloria. You scored 350. Grace let out a quiet sigh of relief, while Gloria threw her arms around Baba's shoulders, laughing. The twins exchanged a look, their faces glowing with quiet pride. After the laughter faded, Baba sat down and held their hands tightly. You both want medicine, ABI? They nodded at the same time. Yes, Dad, Grace said softly. We want to be doctors. We want to save lives. Gloria added, we promised ourselves since JSS2 that we would enter the same faculty together. Baba smiled, but then his smile faded. His gaze dropped to the dusty ground, and his voice grew heavy. That night the house was silent. The little lantern in the corner gave off a weak glow, painting long shadows on the mud walls. Michael sat on the edge of his bed. His hands shook as he held the results paper, reading the scores again and again, though he already knew them by heart. 335, 350, he whispered, as if saying it aloud might change their reality. For years he had been the strong one, the man who carried all burdens without complaint. But that night, tears rolled down his face. He tried to swallow them back, covering his mouth so no one would hear. But the room was too quiet. On their bed, Grace and Gloria lay side by side, eyes wide open in the dark. They had never seen their father cry. Grace whispered, Gloria, Dad is crying. Gloria pressed her hand against her sister's. I know, but let's not let him know we heard. He's already carrying too much. And so they stayed still, listening quietly, as their father's grief poured out into the shadows. By dawn, Mr. Michael had wiped his face, straightened his shoulders, forced a smile. But the twins knew. That morning he left the house in neatly ironed clothes and a pressed cap. He walked from house to house, knocking on the gates of the rich. Please, my children have done well, he begged humbly. One scored 335, the other 350. They want to study medicine. Tell me, I beg you. I'll do anything. But one by one doors closed. Some shook their heads with fake sympathy. Others brushed him off before he could even finish. By midday Michael walked home, dust covering his slippers. For the first time in many years, his back was bent. Not from age, but disappointment. He sat his daughters down. My daughters, I have failed you. You did your part. You worked hard. You gave me results I could never have dreamed of. But, his lips trembled. I am poor. I cannot send even one of you to the university, let alone both. My only wealth is you. But I have nothing else to give. The words cut deep, but the girls did not break. Grace held his hands. Papa, you did not fail us. You raised us. You gave us strength. We will find our way. Gloria's quiet eyes burned with determination. We will not let poverty stop us. We will fight with you. That same week, the twins went out hand in hand searching for work. At a nearby hotel, the manager looked at them and said, You girls are lucky. We are short of staff. We will take you. They began working as waitresses. Long hours. Heavy trays. Tired smiles. But together they endured. Grace made customers laugh. Gloria earned their trust. Together they became unforgettable. Within a year they saved enough to start a roadside canteen. A wooden shed, 2 benches and a borrowed pot. Drivers stopped. Workers came. Go to the twins' place, people said. Their food is like home. Every profit they made they divided. A part for their father. A part for the business. And a part for Gloria's dream. Because Gloria had won a partial scholarship to study medicine. It wasn't enough. She still needed money for books and rent. But Grace never complained. Every evening after closing the canteen she would smile at her sister. Don't worry, Gloria. You will become the doctor we dreamed of. I will carry the weight until then. And Gloria, with tears in her eyes, would whisper back, No. We will carry it together. Their father watched them, his chest heavy with pride and guilt. One night, after a long day of serving pepper soup and rice, Grace swept the canteen floor. Her broom hit something hard under a table. A brown leather wallet. Heavy. She opened it with trembling hands. Stacks of $100 bills. At least 1,000. Her heart pounded. Enough to change their story overnight. But Grace didn't pocket it. She locked the shop and hurried home. "Dad," she whispered, holding it out. "Look what I found." Michael opened it. His mouth fell open. For a long while he was silent. Finally he sighed deeply. "My daughter, this is more money than we have ever seen. But it is not ours." Grace nodded. "Yes, Papa. Tomorrow I will return it." That night sleep refused to come. The temptation pressed heavy on her chest. But she held on to her father's words. The next morning, a sleek black Mercedes-Benz was parked outside her canteen. A tall man in a sharp suit leaned against it, checking his watch. When he saw her, he stepped forward quickly. "Young lady, please, did you see a wallet here yesterday?" Grace reached into her bag and handed it to him. Relief washed over his face. "You have no idea what this means to me." "Thank you." He glanced at his watch, handed her a business card, and said, "I don't have time to talk now, but call me anytime you're free." And with that he slid into the Benz and was gone. That night, Grace lay awake on her mat. The image of the money haunted her. Her trembling fingers. The weight of temptation. But then she looked at her father's tired face in the lantern light. And she whispered to herself, "If I take what is not mine, will I truly be happy?" In the quiet darkness, Grace turned and looked at her father's tired face. This was the same man who had worked himself to the bone for years. The same man who had raised her and her sister without ever stealing or cheating anyone. And now, for the very first time, he had cried before them. She knew deep inside, if she disappointed him, she would break him completely. And so, even in the shadows, she forced a faint smile. "Honesty may not give me riches," she thought, "but it will give me peace." The next morning, Grace opened her canteen as usual. But something was different. For the first time in a long while, she felt light. Proud of herself. Customers noticed. Her smile was brighter, her laughter softer, her service warmer. And business was unusually good. Just before noon, a black 2019 Benz pulled up outside the canteen. Conversations froze. Heads turned. Whispers filled the air. What was such a car doing here? What was such a man doing in a small roadside shop? Grace's heart raced. She recognized him immediately. The man stepped out, this time unhurried. He walked toward her with calm confidence, his eyes fixed on hers. "Good morning," he said. His smile was disarming. "I couldn't stop thinking about what you did yesterday. In this city, honesty is rare. You could have taken the money and disappeared, but you didn't. That speaks volumes about your character." Grace lowered her gaze, her voice humble. "It was never mine, sir. My father raised us to value integrity over money." The man's smile deepened. He nodded, clearly impressed. Then he placed a bag on the counter. Inside was a brand new laptop and an envelope. Grace's fingers trembled as she opened it. Her breath caught. A check. An amount she had never held in her life. Before she could even speak, the man raised his hand gently. "Don't think of this as a reward. Think of it as an investment. People like you are the future. Call me if you ever need anything. My card has my direct number." And with that he left, just as calmly as he came, leaving Grace frozen, the check still shaking in her hands. That evening, when she showed her father, Mr. Michael's eyes filled with tears again. But this time they were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of pride. Placing his hand on her head, he whispered, "You have done what even I could not. You have brought honor to this family." Gloria had just returned from the University of Lagos for the weekend. Her books lay open across the small table. Mr. Michael sat quietly in his chair. Finally, Gloria spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "Grace, you should call him. Maybe he didn't give it to you for nothing." But Grace hesitated. Life had never given them anything for free. What if he wanted something in return? What if it was a trap? That night, she lay awake on her mat, listening to her father's soft coughs in the next room, listening to Gloria's steady breathing, dreaming of one day wearing a doctor's coat. Grace stared into the dark ceiling. her heart heavy, her mind restless. And she whispered to herself, "What if this is God's way of answering our prayers?" The next morning, after serving her first set of customers at the canteen, she finally gathered the courage. She picked up the small Nokia phone they shared at home, her fingers trembling as she dialed the number on the card. The line clicked. A voice, warm, confident, answered almost immediately. "Grace," he said as though he had been waiting, "I was expecting your call." Her breath caught. "I want to see you at my office tomorrow morning," he continued. "Not for anything personal. You have something rare, honesty. And I like people like you." When the call ended, Grace sat motionless, her chest rising and falling with a mixture of fear and hope. She thought of her father's tears 2 weeks ago. She thought of Gloria's dream. She thought of the nights when even Gary had felt like luxury. Grace knew deep down, tomorrow could change everything. The next day, the two sisters dressed simply and took a bus to the address printed on the card. The place shocked them. It was no ordinary office building. It was a tall glass structure in Victoria Island, the kind they had only ever seen in magazines. Grace's palms began to sweat. She wanted to turn back, but her sister held her hand. "Grace, we're already here. Let's just go in." Inside, the air smelled of perfume and leather. Men in suits and women in high heels moved about with purpose. The receptionist, a young woman with red lipstick, looked at them curiously when Grace shyly mentioned the man's name. Within minutes, a tall young man walked briskly towards them. Grace recognized him immediately, the same man from the canteen. But today he was dressed differently, a crisp navy blue suit, a gold wristwatch that gleamed under the light. "You came," he said warmly, smiling as though they were old friends. His eyes flicked briefly to Grace's sister before returning to her. "I wasn't sure you would." Grace swallowed hard. I thought it was best not to come alone." He nodded with understanding. "Wise choice. Please follow me." They entered his office, a wide space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The desk was large but tidy, the shelves stacked with books and awards. Grace sat stiffly in the chair, her sister beside her, both girls feeling like they didn't belong in such a place. The young man leaned forward. "You didn't even check the money, did you? Not everyone would have returned it. That told me something about your character. You're honest. That is rare." Grace lowered her eyes, shy. "It wasn't mine." He chuckled. "That's exactly why I asked you to come. I've been thinking. You run a canteen? Small shop?" "Yes," Grace whispered. "I want to help you expand it. Not just a canteen, something bigger, a proper restaurant. I believe in rewarding honesty. And more than that," he turned to Grace's sister, "I heard you are studying medicine. Scholarships help, but school in Lagos isn't cheap. Let me support both of you." The room fell silent. The sisters looked at each other, their father's tear-streaked face flashing in their minds, the struggles they had endured, the hunger, the long nights. Grace's sister was the first to speak. "Why us? You don't even know us." The man leaned back and smiled faintly. "Because once upon a time, someone helped my family too. And I promised myself that when I had the chance, I would do the same for others." Grace's heart pounded. She didn't know it yet, but this moment was the beginning of a life-changing journey. Grace looked at her sister, who was already tearing up with joy. For the first time, Grace felt a door opening, a door she never thought existed for someone like her. She stood slowly, her voice trembling. "Thank you, sir. I don't know what to say." "Say yes when you're ready," he replied, handing her a folder. "Inside is my plan. Go through it. Think carefully. And when you're ready, call me." As the girls walked out of the office, Grace's heart beat so loudly she thought the entire building could hear it. Outside, Glory grabbed her twin's hands. "Grace, this is it. This is the turning point." And though Grace was still in disbelief, a small smile escaped her lips. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a dream, it felt real. At first, Grace thought he was joking. But weeks later, the man, David, who is the son of a rich man, sent his company's renovation team to her small spot. Wooden benches were replaced with clean metal chairs, a proper counter was built, and even the branding was redone. What used to be Grace and Glory Canteen became Twins Kitchen. Glory had just finished her second year in school, so they had a long holiday. She's helping out. Customers poured in, surprised that the little shack they knew had transformed into a place that felt like a proper eatery but still had the heart of local food. Word spread quickly, construction workers, office staff, and even students came around. David didn't just stop there. He introduced Grace to food suppliers who gave her discounts and even helped her register the business officially. Within a year, what started as a roadside canteen turned into a chain of 2 more small outlets across Lagos, each one buzzing with customers. Their father, who once cried because he could not afford to send both daughters to school, now sat every evening outside the shop, watching proudly as his daughters worked side by side. But while Grace's life was transforming in business, something else was stirring quietly in the background. Daniel, David's twin brother, seemed to have taken a special interest in Grace. Unlike David's businesslike approach, Daniel often stopped by unannounced, buying food not because he was hungry, but because he wanted to see her. Grace didn't know what to make of it yet. She only knew that her life had shifted from struggling to surviving, and now perhaps to something even greater. Life had changed completely for the twins and their father. For the first time in years, Mr. Michael could rest. Grace and Glory went to him one bright morning, their faces glowing. "Papa," Grace said, taking his hands, "you don't need to do all those jobs anymore. You've worked too hard for too long." Glory nodded. "Yes, Papa. We can take care of everything now. You just need to relax." Mr. Michael blinked back tears. "Girls, I don't even know what to say. All I ever wanted was for you both to have a future. But, this." He gestured around at the small office in their restaurant, the neatly dressed staff moving efficiently. "This is more than I ever dreamed." The girls had hired cooks, waiters, cleaners, and a manager to run the daily operations. Grace oversaw the kitchen and menu, while Glory made sure everything ran smoothly on the floor and kept track of the finances. Every night, the restaurant was packed, yet the sisters remained humble, never forgetting their beginnings. With the business doing well, Mr. Michael was able to leave his labor jobs behind entirely. He spent mornings in the restaurant office, quietly observing the girls, proud beyond words. Sometimes he would chuckle to himself, remembering the nights they had all gone hungry, or the long walks home from school carrying heavy books. Grace and Glory's lives had completely transformed. They no longer worried about money for school, bills, or groceries. They were living in comfort, able to afford proper clothes, good food, and even a modest car for the family. And yet, despite the wealth, they remained grounded. They continued to respect every customer. They taught their employees to treat everyone kindly. And they made sure the restaurant kept its warm, homely feel. Their father often said, "I may have lost many things in life, but today my greatest wealth is watching my daughters grow into women of character, strength, and heart." As they closed the restaurant one evening, watching the city lights flicker across Lagos, Grace whispered to her sister, "Glory, can you believe it? From a small canteen to this, all of this is ours. And we did it honestly." Glory smiled. "Yes, Grace. And it's just the beginning." With their father safe, respected, and finally at peace, the twins felt a new sense of purpose. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were thriving. One morning, as Grace and Glory were supervising Twin Kitchen, a woman walked timidly through the door. She was unkempt, her clothes worn, her face carrying the weight of years of hardship. "Excuse me. I heard this place is hiring?" she asked quietly, her voice hesitant. Grace glanced at Glory. "Yes. We have positions for kitchen staff and servers," Grace said politely. "Do you have experience?" The woman nodded eagerly. I can cook, clean, serve, anything really. I just need work. I've been struggling for months and I heard you run a good place." Glory leaned closer to Grace, whispering, "Something about her feels familiar, doesn't it?" Grace shook her head. She had never met her mother. She only knew that their mother had left when they were babies. Grace gestured for the woman to wait while they considered. "All right," Grace said finally. "You can start tomorrow as a kitchen helper. We'll see how it goes." The woman's eyes filled with tears. Thank you so much. I won't let you down." The next day she arrived promptly. She washed dishes, swept floors, and helped with prep. Grace and Glory watched her work, noting her efficiency. But they still didn't recognize her. She was just another employee at the restaurant. At first, they treated her like any other staff member. But there was a quiet strength about her, an air of someone who had survived many struggles, much like themselves. Grace couldn't help but feel a vague sense of curiosity, though she didn't know why. "Don't worry," Grace whispered to Glory during a break. "We'll see how she works. That's all that matters." Glory nodded. "Yes, we don't know her and we've never seen her before. She's just another person here to earn a living." Days turned into weeks. The woman proved herself diligent, never complaining, always punctual. Grace and Glory saw that she was talented in the kitchen, helping the restaurant maintain its growing reputation. Little did the sisters know, they were working alongside the very mother they had never known, the woman who had left them as babies, now humbled by life, and seeking a second chance without even realizing the full story. One morning their father entered. He saw her. The same woman that left him many years ago. His face hardened. His voice rose. "Glory. Grace. What is this woman doing here?" The twins froze. They had never seen their father this angry. "She's the new kitchen assistant we hired," Glory said, confused. The woman standing in front of them froze too, speechless. Tears ran down her cheeks. She whispered through sobs, "I'm sorry." Mr. Michael's voice cut through the air. "This is your mother. The useless woman who left you when you were 6 months old." The girls stood stunned. They couldn't explain where their tears came from. Eudora, their mother, fell to her knees, begging for forgiveness. But all the twins could say was, "Why?" They had never known a mother's love. They felt helpless. And so, they sent her away. Hours passed in heavy silence. Their father, who had suffered the most, finally spoke. "I will forgive her," he said slowly, "letting bygones be bygones, because I want you, my daughters, to know what a mother's love feels like." Grace and Glory, out of love and respect for their father, decided to forgive her too. They gave Eudora a chance. Despite the past, they wanted to be fair. They made her the chief staff at Twin Kitchen, trusting her to oversee the kitchen and staff while the sisters focused on the business side. At first she seemed grateful. She arrived early. She organized the kitchen. She even assisted new hires. The twins were cautiously optimistic. Maybe she had truly changed. But it didn't last. Her old habits returned. She insulted the workers, berated them over small mistakes, called them lazy, incompetent. The friendly atmosphere the sisters had built began to collapse. Morale dropped. Some staff even threatened to quit. Grace and Glory intervened gently at first. "Mum, please, you're upsetting the team," Grace said one morning. But Eudora snapped. "You girls don't understand. You don't love me. You never did. Your father, he's a fool. He couldn't even send you to school. I should be in charge." Glory's face hardened. "We gave you a chance. This isn't about love. It's about respect, for the staff, for the restaurant, and for our family." The conversation escalated. Voices rose. Accusations flew. The mother insulted the girls. She insulted their father. The twins held their ground, refusing to stoop to anger. The next morning, Twin Kitchen was chaos. Orders delayed. Ingredients mismanaged. Staff exhausted. And worse, 500,000 naira missing from the till. Their mother was gone. Grace and Glory looked at each other in silence. "She isn't the mother we need," Grace said quietly. "No," Glory agreed. "We gave her a chance. She chose greed and chaos instead of family. They didn't chase her. Twin Kitchen had survived worse. And it would survive this. They rebuilt order, restored trust with the staff, and the restaurant grew even stronger. That day, Grace and Glory learned a lesson. Blood doesn't make family. Forgiveness has limits. True family is respect, honesty, and integrity. Months passed. Twin Kitchen had grown into a thriving brand. Grace and Glory were no longer struggling girls. They were confident businesswomen, respected by staff and customers alike. Their father, Mr. Michael, spent his days peacefully at home, proud of the daughters he had raised. One afternoon, David came to visit Twin Kitchen. This time he was accompanied by his brother, Daniel. They walked into the restaurant like old friends, but the way they observed the sisters showed admiration. Daniel approached Grace. "I've been following your progress, and I must say I'm impressed. You've turned a small canteen into something extraordinary." Grace smiled politely. "Thank you, Daniel. But we didn't do it alone. We had a lot of help, guidance, and determination." David leaned toward Glory. "And you've been the backbone?" keeping everything running smoothly. I admire that. As weeks turned into months, the twins and the brothers spent more time together. The relationships grew deeper. Daniel would stop by Twin Kitchen under the guise of business advice. But he always found time to help Grace with small decisions, listen to her ideas, and support her dreams. David did the same with Glory. Eventually, both couples realized their love had grown, from respect and admiration into something lifelong. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It was natural, built on shared experiences, trust, and honesty. On a sunny afternoon, the four of them stood together, in a small, intimate ceremony. Grace and Glory wore simple but elegant dresses. Daniel and David were in tailored suits. Their father, Mr. Michael, stood proudly beside them, tears in his eyes. "I've watched you girls grow from struggling students into extraordinary women," he said softly. "And today, I see you build families of your own. I couldn't be prouder." The weddings were a celebration of more than just love. They celebrated hard work, resilience, the triumph of honesty and integrity. The sisters and brothers didn't just marry. They united the values that had brought them all together: respect, trust, unwavering support. From that day on, Twin Kitchen continued to flourish. Now a family business in every sense. Not just profit, not just growth, but love, loyalty, and shared dreams. Grace and Glory had found not only success, but partners who valued them, a father finally at peace, and a life built on everything they had struggled for together. After the weddings of Grace and Daniel, and Glory and David, the sisters noticed something their father had been quietly hiding. Even with Twin Kitchen thriving, and their lives full of joy, Mr. Michael still carried a quiet loneliness. One evening, as the family gathered around the dining table, Grace spoke gently. "Papa, we've worked so hard to give you peace and comfort, but we can't always be here to keep you company." Glory added softly, "Yes, Papa. You deserve happiness too. Not all women are like Mama. You shouldn't spend your life alone." Mr. Michael looked down at his plate, a mixture of emotion on his face. "Girls, I've lived a long time and I've been hurt. I don't know if I can trust anyone again." Grace reached across the table, taking his hand. "Papa, you've taught us to be strong, honest, and kind. That's who you are. You deserve someone who sees that, who can share this life with you. We just want you to be happy." Glory smiled warmly. "Please, Papa, let us help you find someone. We promise she'll be different." Mr. Michael looked at his daughters, and realized the truth in their words. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. A few months later, he met Mrs. Evelyn, a kind-hearted, warm woman, who shared his love for family, honesty, and hard work. Grace and Glory helped their father navigate the early days carefully, ensuring that Mrs. Evelyn was trustworthy and genuine. Slowly, Mr. Michael opened his heart again. Eventually, he remarried in a small, joyful ceremony. Grace and Glory stood proudly beside him, witnessing the father they loved find companionship and happiness after years of struggle. And they built him a new, very beautiful house as a wedding gift. That house became their true home, since it was their father's house. Now their family was whole again. The twins thriving, their husbands supportive, their father finally at peace, and a woman who brought warmth and love into their home. Twin Kitchen continued to flourish, and the household was filled with laughter, love, and purpose. The sisters often reflected on how far they had come, from poverty, uncertainty, and abandonment, to a life full of success, family, and happiness. Years passed since Mr. Michael remarried Mrs. Evelyn. The home was filled with warmth and laughter whenever the family gathered. Though Grace and Glory now lived in their own homes with their husbands, Daniel and David, the bond between them remained unshakable. Grace continued to oversee Twin Kitchen, managing the business from her home base, ensuring that the restaurant maintained its reputation for quality and integrity. She took pride in seeing the staff work efficiently, the customers satisfied, and the brand steadily expanding. Her life was full, but her thoughts always returned to her family and the values that had brought them this far. Meanwhile, Glory had completed her studies at the University of Lagos, earning both her master's and PhD. Her dedication and skill led her to open her own hospital, a modern facility serving the community that had once nurtured her. Though she lived in her own home with David, She visited her father often, sharing updates on her work, and making sure the family stayed connected. The sisters often reflected on how far they had come, from struggling children in a modest home, to women of influence and success. Their father, now at peace and happily married to Mrs. Evelyn, watched with pride as his daughters thrived in their separate lives, yet remained devoted to family and to each other. One evening during a family gathering at Twin Kitchen, Mr. Michael looked at his daughters with tears of pride in his eyes. "Girls, I have watched you grow. From determined little children into extraordinary women. You've built not only success, but a family I can be proud of." Grace smiled warmly. "Papa, even though we have our own homes now, you'll always be the center of our family." Glory nodded. "We'll continue to make you proud, Papa, in every way we can. Our lives may be separate, but our bond will always keep us close." As Lagos glittered under the night sky, the family celebrated not just accomplishments, but the journey that had carried them from hardship to triumph. Every struggle, every sacrifice, had led to this life. A life transformed by resilience, love, and unbreakable family ties. Grace ran Twin Kitchen with skill and heart. Glory ran her hospital with compassion and dedication. And together they had created a legacy that would inspire generations, even from different homes.